Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Just as some quick context here, last weekend Austin Witsit went on Modern Day Debates, and there was an after show in which me and Alan joined and Austin joined, and we were discussing with Ozien from Matters Now the papers from Dayton Miller and also from Yuri Galaev. So Ozien said he was going to read through said papers. He did not actually read through Yuri Galaev. He said he was having a hard time retrieving the files and also that it wasn't peer reviewed. So that is the context here. Me and Alan and eventually Witsit popped on here to discuss the papers with them. And I want to say a major thank you to Ozien for having us on. And this is indeed mirrored from his channel. So if you want to go over there and subscribe and support him, that would be fantastic. Thanks a lot, everybody. I hope you enjoy.
Welcome, Grayson. Welcome, everybody, to the show. I know there's a lot of controversy in the live chat already with my presentation. And I did not use ChatGPT. I use Pseudo-Write. It's a writing tool I use. Anyways, not ChatGPT. But it does help me like with grammar and help me with the flow. But I got to like build the outline and all that stuff. So anyways, how you doing, Grayson? What did you think? What did I get wrong there?
No, it was a good presentation. I think they might be confusing you with Witsit, who does actually use ChatGPT to get erroneous information.
Oh my goodness. It's MC Toon. How you doing?
I'm good. Hey, don't let me interrupt. Keep going.
Go ahead.
No, I mean, it's pretty clear. Ether doesn't exist. Neither does Ether Wind or Ether Drift or any of that. So excited for the Flurfs to come on and maybe express a different opinion.
Yeah, the link is posted, pinned at the top of the live chat. They're more than welcome. We got Space Audits, Run Boston Bear, few other people in the live chat. Hopefully they come up.
In the meantime, I wanted to ask about this paper by did either of you guys read like Hector Munera, who's been doing sort of more recent, more modern experiments similar to the Michelson-Morley and saying, you know, what they got wrong and using more modern techniques to get better results?
I've read both Miller and Munera. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that Miller's claim is that you need to do the tests at high elevation and away from things like being enclosed in brick or metal. And then Munera did it at low elevation and enclosed in brick. And Munera measured a significantly larger ether drift, according to his conclusion, than Miller did. So I don't know how those are consistent with each other.
But that was the criticism of Shacklin, right? The criticism of Shacklin's work was that it was indoors, like that the ether wind wasn't allowed to affect it. But I'd be interested to hear your take, Alan.
Yeah, so let's see here. So Munera, what they did was they didn't count the fringe shifts proportionally to how you normally count them. So he just counted enough to get what he needed so that the square of the velocity would come out to be so that it would come out to match the galactic speed, right? That's why it differs in that regard in terms of the altitude.
So are you saying that Munera cooked the books so that he got the results that he wanted?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he admitted to that. Like it's
chuck it out then.
He admitted to that, huh?
He still measured fluctuations, but yeah.
He measured the fluctuations that he wanted to measure.
He goes over how he measured the fringes and he counted more than you normally count. So like if you're familiar with how a ring...
To be clear, what he specifically said, right, was that there was a latent assumption within Miller and Morley and Michelson's previous experiments that the fringe shift should be less than 1, i.e. fractional. And he said that this is a mistake and you should read the absolute like integer fringes. And so he was saying that was a flaw with the initial experiments. But you're saying now that he has admitted to cooking the books in favor of what he was already presupposing. So could you provide a source where he owns up to that?
Yeah, in his own paper where he goes over that analysis, which you just cited. So, and on top of that, if you're familiar with how a ring laser gyroscope works, you don't read the fringes in that way. It's the same device. It's making the same reading. You can't just count more fringes and then get a different proportional velocity, then have another piece of technology that does the same thing, but doesn't count the fringes in the same way, but gets a proportional velocity exactly, right? So it doesn't make sense. So he's the only ones that measures this galactic speed, but nobody else does. We haven't even got to satellites yet, and what those account for, and how they would have to account for fluctuations in those planes of motions if there was a galactic speed. So when a satellite is parallel or perpendicular to that plane of motion, it will be added to its to the retardation within time, right? So, and that doesn't exist. So these galactic speeds are a result of not counting the fringes correctly.
I have a
I'm
question.
glad that you were able to that you actually read it, dude. That's awesome. Shout out to you. What's your name?
I'm Grayson. My channel is Base Theory.
Base Theory. How much have you? Sorry, go ahead.
Those are the smart ones over there. Those two. I just like to do debates.
Yeah.
But I do have a question. About laser ring gyroscopes. What is it detecting? Because as far as I understand, Miller was saying you don't see this type of ether winds unless you're up at high altitudes. But what's accounting for this 15-degree shift we see on the surface if you're in a building? Because Miller's also saying, well, you're not going to get the same readings if you're in a building. You need to be outdoor, exposed to the weather at high altitudes. I don't understand how that explains what we see on a laser ring gyroscope.
Yeah, so for the linear interferometry, the error tolerance is different. So there's a slightly different.
It's not the linear. These are the rotational, right?
1 second. So there's a difference in the sensitivity that they'll be able to measure at, right? So the closed loop circuit is more sensitive, and it's able to measure. It's just able to measure more finely, right? More precisely, right? So for the orthogonal setup, right? For the Michelson-Morley type setups, they have to be they get the lower readings at in a basement and all that, and it goes up in altitude because there's more translation of motion. So for the more sensitive closed loop circuit, it can get a stronger reading even at a lower altitude, but it still increases at altitude, and that was noted by Sagnac himself, because he posted a paper saying that when he did his setup at altitude, that there was a variance in that, and that they can no longer use the the ratio that they use to explain aberration. So you know how in the heliocentric model they say that stellar aberration is proof of Earth's motion because they ratio the angle against the speed of light and they get 30 kilometers a second. You familiar with that?
Yeah, I'm just more so like, does that explain why we see the 15-degree?
Oh,
does the Miller work? Does the Miller work
explain
that?
So yeah, it's the same measurement. So he measured a fluctuation with sidereal time. Michelson, Gale, Pearson measured the same thing. It all measures sidereal fluctuations.
The 15-degree per hour shift. That's what Miller was measuring.
The Michelson, Gale, Pearson is the Sagnac effect. That's
Miller wasn't measuring 15 degrees per hour. That was he has a
all
type of instrument.
All interferometers fluctuate with sidereal time in correspondence with that 15 degree per hour shift. That's a fact.
Just like a pendulum.
So it's the. I mean, you can disagree all you want. It's the same apparatus, dude. And they make the same measurement. So they made special relativity based on the linear interferometer. They have it separated as if it's making separate measurements, and the closed loop circuit is like a special interferometer and only measures absolute rotation, right? So with that distinction there, they can say, okay, well, we can ignore the results of Michelson-Morley, even though that proportional velocity relationship that's extrapolated from the fringes shows that there's not 30 kilometers a second. So they ignore that one and classify it like they're two different things, measuring two different things, but they fluctuate with the same reading. So it's not fluctuating linearly and angularly, but you can't measure the full velocity proportionally. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, they even accounted for that in 2017 when they did those resonance readings to measure the velocity. They literally had to take into account daily fluctuations and seasonal variance. So, I mean, they were literally like accounting for what Miller's talking about. Like Alan was saying, like this is like just a fact that's known, and they actually have to account for it when it comes to actually applying mechanics to science to actually measure something or do something real. This is like a known phenomena. That's why with GPS, it's literally a corresponding perfect Sagnac effect of C plus or minus V, right? The proportional velocity of the GPS craft is actually has to be accounted for in the reception times of the range measurement equations in order to keep the atomic clocks in sync, in order to tell people where they are. Actually, if you take
And actually, interestingly, with that, if you take this preferred directionality of the speed of light that Miller measured, if you take that out of those GPS equations, you end up being off by about 30 to 40 meters, with every time you use GPS to see where you are.
So if I can just restate what you're saying there. So the GPS, which is thousands of kilometers above the surface of the Earth, and moving at a significant speed in relation to the surface of the Earth, they're taking that velocity and that's what you're saying. They're modifying their readings based on the elevation and the speed above the surface of the Earth.
Yeah. So the equations. Yeah. So the equations specifically that they have their general relativity correction, right? Which they say that at the altitude that the satellite, I don't know why I'm doing air quotes for that. At the altitude that the satellites are at, they say that they're 20 kilometers up or whatever, or 20,000 kilometers up. So they say that there's an equal gravitational potential there. So that's their general relativity prediction, right? So if there's a static electric gradient, which there is, and there's impedance with that as you go up.
Hold on. What's static electric gradient?
The static electric gradient on Earth that's measured.
It ends at 50 kilometers. So past 50 kilometers, it doesn't. So, there isn't one.
Okay, well that's from the data that you have, and remember we don't believe in the same distances and stuff. So I'm just kind of laying.
You cited it.
You have to measure it.
I'm laying out my response to the corrections, right? So anyway, so as you're going through that field, there's going to be impedance to that, to the permittivity and permeability. So there's going to be impedance. So that's the same kind of correction, right? These are small, minuscule corrections that they didn't even account for until after like 2000, right? Like I have a paper from 1995 where they say that the general and special relativity corrections are so minuscule that they cancel each other out. So we're getting into like just now where they're just now accounting for these things with more sensitive stuff, right? So I'm explaining to you what they could be accounting for, right? Because they're just accounting for electromagnetic retardation, and that could happen with an electric field and a magnetic field. That's the Zeeman and Stark effect, right? So there's a general relativistic correction, right? Now, when they get the special relativity, they say they're making a go ahead. Are you Ozien?
Yeah, I do have a question. Like there was this disagreement of this 50 kilometers thing with these measurements for the E field, right? Or you're calling electrostatic or something. So where was these measurements that you came to? Like you're making these claims and inserting certain measurements.
Yeah. We only have the equations.
Let me finish really quick. Okay, so
I'm just telling. I'm just filling in the blank. What's up?
Okay, so I want to know which. Okay, so it's you're filling in the blank based on your interpretation of the data, not necessarily that there's a paper explaining this concept that you're talking about that's been tested,
right?
With a null and hypotheses. It's just this is your hypothesis.
Yeah, they're giving their explanation for gravitational potential being equal, right? They're obviously going to view it through that lens. Like that's totally fine. Like I get what you're saying. Oh, you're quoting the paper. You have to believe in what they're saying.
No,
that's why I'm laying out the gravitational potential field and the impedance, because it's all electromagnetic retardation. What causes it is in contention.
Can I say something really quick? Just really quickly. I'm completely curious about what the word retardation has to do, and I mean it in the sense that we're all using that word here, obviously, to like impede something or something like that. What that has to do with the Stark or the Zeeman effect, because those are just the fine or hyperfine splitting of spectral lines and atoms as a result of the presence of either an electric in the Stark sense and or a magnetic in the Zeeman sense field. So I don't know what would be getting retarded in that situation.
Those effects, that splitting is caused by the retardation. So
the retardation of what?
So of the electromagnetic propagation that's going through the fields.
I don't know what you mean by electromagnetic propagation. Just the presence of the field causes this. There's like nothing in motion that would be retarded in any way. It's the presence of the field finely or hyperfinely splits the spectral lines of atoms, which would be sort of the quote unquote lines along which the electrons can jump to because they have discrete energy points. And so if you imagine zooming in on those lines, and I'm speaking a bit flowery here because quantum mechanics is not easy despite people thinking that it is. If you zoomed in on those lines, you would actually see that they're made up of even smaller lines that are just really close together. And then if you zoom in on one of those lines, you might find it happen again, and that would be fine or hyperfine splitting. And that's what the Stark-Zeeman effect refers to. I've actually taken courses in quantum mechanics, and in the second one, like you do the Stark-Zeeman effect, like you work out the math of it. So I'm sorry, but as somebody who's done that, take the credit for whatever you think it's worth. I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay.
Can I try to
monologue?
steel man a little bit? When you're talking about, are you talking about the electromagnetic field where it reduces in power as it gets further away? What are you talking about when you're talking about retardation, and what's causing that to happen? I guess would be.
So
Okay.
the speed of light is slowing down as it's going through a field. That's what I'm saying. So when they're measuring it with an atomic clock and they have a second broken down to 9,100,299 millionth of a second, they can this is where it's coming into a factor. These like minuscule corrections coming through the field impedance of the sky, right? That high charge potential going through.
Light slows down in what field?
Try and keep up, homie. The fucking sky is positively charged as you go up in altitude.
So you're saying in the electromagnetic field.
So the field increases. Yes, there's an increase in impedance.
But not
Wait,
past
but that
50
makes
kilometers.
no sense because light is the electromagnetic field. It's what happens when you quote unquote shake the electromagnetic field. That's why electricity can produce light. Like this whole thing that we've been using for like 150 years. What?
Well,
again,
I want to understand what
he's
about. I want to understand what he's saying though too, and not just
So when they're doing their equations, they're accounting for the speed of light changing proportional to the velocity of what's carrying the craft or what's carrying the clock, right? So the electromagnetic propagation that's happening within the clock, right? You understand that part? And then they convert that into an electric signal, right? Which then they say, okay, that resonant frequency corresponds to 9,100,209 or whatever.
What resonant frequency?
Of a cesium.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay,
yeah.
The clock, yeah.
So the clock desyncs proportional to the velocity of the craft, right? So it retards proportional to its velocity. That's what I'm talking about. Now, this is a second correction. Sorry.
Is this related to the 14?
No.
Is this related to the
your
14?
Model would say it is time dilation, but it's objectively just a classical effect that's observed one way west-east, another way east to west, just like the velocity of light with the range measurement equation. Sorry, Ozien.
Yeah, that's okay. So there's a 14 nanosecond difference between the east to west and west to east, but that's still not actually measuring the one-way speed of light, because we are still using clocks that we're seeing that are precisely calibrated to GPS satellites in orbit. That we're seeing this 14 nanosecond difference in speed. So, but we say that is because the Earth is rotating, and it's a Sagnac effect that's causing it. It's explained by whatever, Leo. It's explained by relativity. So, like, we have an explanation to it with the standard model.
So actually, to even go back to what the Sagnac effect even is, that's actually not in accordance with relativity. It completely falsifies it.
It doesn't
No, it
actually.
doesn't.
But
No,
I say, like,
people don't say that.
the Sagnac.
I don't care what people say. Do you guys want to walk through the narrative real quick? I can pull up the paper so we can walk through it right now if you're interested.
I'll explain the Sagnac effect to you.
Go ahead.
And then you can explain what is causing the Sagnac effect, because the position of the observer is asymmetric with respect to the two different light paths. And that's like during a closed loop of these light paths propagation. If you have an asymmetric position of your observer with respect to that, because of a rotation or other kind of motion, you're going to observe a Sagnac effect happening. This was detailed in a 2022 paper specifically about this, a quest for the origin of the Sagnac effect by Badra et al.
Yep.
I think it's also worth pointing out with respect to the Sagnac effect,
Leo,
the differences in arrival times with respect to the movement of the light with the rotation.
This isn't going to work. Leo, Leo, Grayson spoke. Give Toby
I was
a chance
adding
to
on to what he said.
Yeah,
I understand,
it's unnecessary.
More for the audience's sake.
Go ahead, Toby, and respond to Grayson.
I'm trying to find the paper, but the paper he's talking about, it's hilarious because what they say in that paper, they offer a mathematical explanation. They do a Lorentz transformation on a little local interferometer, a local linear intersection of linear interferometry, or not little, but local, like you're not looking out to the sun or anything. You measure exact proportional fringe shift of the direct velocity of that waveguide loop And yeah, like in your physical lab frame, in your reality, you measured a velocity difference proportional to the linear motion of that waveguide loop in your reality, but then they have to take a geometrically convenient position, which is already going against Albert Einstein's 1905 paper, where he says you actually can't do that because there is no absolute space from which to take a convenient position. But in any case, they take a convenient symmetrical position and invoke an absolute space, which is against the rules. And then they do a Lorentz transform. And guess what? Like, that's just a complete post-diction. It has no predictive capabilities whatsoever. It's just a post-diction calculation that you're using to explain a first order measurement. And with all of this stuff, everything you said, Ozien, in your opener about, oh, that's not his conclusion, and that's not these people's conclusions, and this and that. It's like, dude, I don't care. I'm looking at first order measurements. And even Miller made a very clear distinction in the 1830 paper. If you actually read it, you know that he talked very distinctly about first order measurements versus second order measurements, and about how he was talking at this point about second order measurements, but the first order measurements are a serious problem. He literally uses the word problem.
Yeah, I think I could like steel man my position a little bit or explain my position. So like science, if you studied philosophy of science at all, I'm sure you have, like these papers have embedded presuppositions in them to even take these measurements, which is my point. Like you can't appeal to the paper. You should do your own paper based upon the same presups and do the measurements based upon those presuppositions for your hypothesis for what you think the world is like. That's the point of my argument.
Here's a presupposition of the
and
papers
what
that
paper was
with.
that? Really,
So,
what paper was that you posted?
Oh, that was the paper that he just cited. That was on the quest for origin of the Sagnac effect. So as Toby just explained there,
I mean, what's the title and author and
yeah. So it's I got you. 1 second. I'll put it in the chat.
Okay.
Can I explain why you get different arrival times for the two rays of light and a Sagnac effect? Get the Sagnac effect?
Only if we can explain right
I'm
afterwards
asking the
why we
host
can't.
of this show, not you. I'm sorry.
Sorry, go ahead. You're right.
Yeah, let's let Leo give him a chance to talk about it. Then Alan and Toby can respond.
So the thing with a Sagnac type device is it's rotating, and you have two rays of light going in opposite directions around it. So I want you to imagine if you were on a merry-go-round and there was a specific post on that merry-go-round you wanted to get to. If running in the same direction as the merry-go-round will get you there faster, or whether running in the opposite direction of the rotation of the merry-go-round will get you there faster. Same basic effect. The trajectory of the light is being elongated in one instance and shortened in the other for the same reason. So the corrections aren't corrections in the magnitude of light. They are corrections in its trajectory.
Yeah.
So it isn't showing a change in the speed of light. And the thing about the Sagnac effect is it's trivial, actually. Like, just go take any relativity course. If you actually take one, it's trivial. Also, I did want to mention, I don't know, Toby, I guess, doesn't really understand what the Lorentz transformations are, because if you take any object in the universe and you move it at very, very, very high speeds, large fractions of the speed of light, the Galilean transformations will not return proper results for measuring its motion and other features of it. You have to use Lorentz transformations, and that's because the universe is relativistic. Motion is relativistic. Time is relativistic. These are all relative properties of things. They only mean something in virtue of some other frame of reference against which you're measuring. So,
all right.
Well said.
Who's having all the background noise right now?
I think this MC tune.
Sorry.
Okay. Hey, Toby, so do you want to take this? I got Einstein's paper pulled up if you want to start with the preface of the absolute space issue before we get to the fringe.
Sure, yeah, I can go jump over to the absolute space real quick. So yeah, just in 1905, Albert Einstein's On the Electrodynamics of Moving Bodies, page 1. The introduction of a luminiferous ether will prove to be superfluous, and as much as the view here to be developed will not require an absolutely stationary space provided with special properties, nor assign a velocity vector to a point of the empty space in which electromagnetic processes take place. So you can't invoke a symmetrically convenient position for your Lorentz transform for the Wang 2004 paper. That's just bunk, according to Einstein 1905. But then also really quick, the paper that you did provide, I just want to read from that really quick. In the lab frame, the non-midpoint position, which we just showed, Albert Einstein just said you can't even do this, the non-midpoint position of the observer and thereby inequality of the path lengths of the two oppositely directed light rays in the Sagnac experiment is straightforward. However, from the standpoint of the rotating observer, the issue is quite difficult to understand. It's almost like you can mathematically you can do it, but physically, it's kind of useless physically. But
because the Sagnac effect is kind of unintuitive.
Let somebody else respond, Leo, if they got it.
Yeah. So what he was saying there, that it's difficult to explain, right? So the paper cited to explain the Sagnac effect, right, doesn't actually explain it. It explains it with a thought experiment, number one. Number two, the reason why it's difficult to explain, right, is because if the speed of light is constant, and if you're invoking a difference in the length traveled due to the rotation of the device, right, because you're saying that it's rotating in one direction, so it's taking longer to travel, then it can't produce a fringe shift. At best, you could get a second order Doppler shift out of it. But even then, come on, guys, it literally measures a fringe displacement.
How they measured the fact that it was different arrival times for each?
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. So your explanation doesn't work.
So why did you say
what I said? Go ahead, Grace.
It wouldn't. If the speed of light was the same, the arrival time would be the same for both, regardless.
No, but no. It's the reason it's not is because the two paths are not symmetric with regard to the observer, as in your measurement device. I have no idea, Toby, why you said that their paper explained the Sagnac effect has to invoke some sort of absolute space or defies relativity. It doesn't. And you tried to point out a contradiction. I couldn't tell what you were trying to say the contradiction even was.
They can't. Okay, so first of all, the contradiction is they can't explain the speed of light differing, producing the fringe without invoking absolute space and then the Lorentz transformation. But even then, there's a secondary problem because you're just watching it rotate symmetrically, right? And then you have
show me where they invoked absolute space.
It's not about you, it's about the clock, right? That's measuring it. That's the thing that's moving, both clocks.
Well, we're talking about two different things here, kind of.
Okay. Well, I have a question with the wait, hold on, Leo.
Don't work in absolute space. That's all I wanted to say. They assume relativistic space-time.
Exactly.
I just pointed out, I think, also, like Einstein said, we don't need to appeal to a luminiferous ether. But neither was Miller, right? Miller was appealing to like an ether wind, not a non-luminiferous ether. I'm just learning this thinking word today.
Yeah, you're getting caught up on mixed up terminology. Like it's the same thing.
No, the luminiferous ether was non-moving static that everything moved within. It's about the medium which light has to propagate through. Sorry. Yeah, but Miller argued that everything moved. And there was this other thing. So he's saying that both are true within his model. That's what he was arguing for. He said luminiferous ether is not actually a thing. It's this other thing that our planet's moving in a direction. I posted a picture of it to Draco or whatever. And we have this ether that also moves a little bit too with everything else that we're moving within that. Anyways, yes.
Can we just take a step back really quick and can I just ask Alan and Toby, what is your ultimate thesis or point with all of this? Are you sitting here going through all these experiments trying to show that the ether does exist? Is that the point? Or can you just summarize?
Well, the ether has never been falsified.
A quick abstract of what your point is.
The speed
go ahead, Alan.
Okay, so the ether's never been falsified, and the speed of light is proportional to the velocity of the observer.
The ether has been falsified, just to be clear.
Yeah.
Negative. What was the experiment?
The Michelson experiment.
The one where it shows a fringe shift. The one where it shows a proportional fringe shift of 6 kilometers a second, which was corroborated by Miller and then corroborated by Galaev.
The Shacklin experiments that were even more precise.
What? To be clear, there was no repeat of Miller and there was no repeat of Muniz. None of that was repeated. Muniz didn't repeat Miller. They got drastically different results. So these are two independent experiments that have never been repeated. Repeatability is critical. So if you have one outlier, that's not the one.
We've got Galaev who corroborates Miller as well.
All right. So
we have another balloon. We have a balloon experiment in the 30s that corroborates Miller as well. They took an interferometer on an air balloon and did it.
What? Yeah, from Picard, right?
Yeah, he did.
Picard did a bunch and did not get.
Yeah.
Well, more importantly, we have no measurements of that standard contradiction to Miller that don't use either dielectric insulators or metals shielding the interferometer.
Okay.
But when
it doesn't matter
at altitude, what
it does.
They were not.
You would understand that he actually measured the specific viscosity of ether.
There was no repeat
proportional,
It's an
proportional
outlier.
to the shielding on the interferometer using metals or dielectric insulators. And he actually found that you know exactly like Miller said, wow, all these people that are putting metal around their interferometers and setting them up, they're not getting readings. Well, what do you know? When you put metal around it, it actually has a very specific effect on the viscosity of the ether. I mean, Miller measured it, or Galaev measured it very precisely, and his math is actually pretty impressive if you actually go and look at it. But you know, we're not going to look at it because he's from a country we don't approve of or some crap. Like, come on, man.
I didn't say that.
Do you have a contention with his actual measurements? Do you have a contention with his methodology, or just a contention with you just want to smear him as a source? I'm talking to Ozien because his whole 20-minute opener where he just smeared Galaev, he just hand wave dismissed the whole thing.
Because it has ether made of.
Science, it's about peer review, about validating the measurements.
But who's going to
repeatability?
You're not gonna
repeatability.
Well, then somebody needs to peer review Galaev before me, as somebody who has no friggin' clue, is going to accept anything Galaev says is true. Why would I accept?
Because it's an ether model. It's ether kinematics, and
it has nothing to do with it being an ether model.
You're not going to get funding to do ether kinematics. You're not going to get any support to do ether kinematics.
Just like you wouldn't get funding for phlogiston either.
And it's not just Michelson Morley. You have Shacklin's group that came together and tested Miller's work and refuted Miller's work. He did it.
Doesn't even he doesn't even look at the Mount Wilson data. Mount Wilson data. Remember the stuff that Miller said was important, the Mount Wilson data? You know, that stuff that Shanklin specifically doesn't look at for some reason? Huh.
Yo,
I've got a really important question here.
Hold on a second, Leo.
What is the ether? Because apparently the ether
nobody
has
knows.
viscosity and it can be physically measured.
Nobody knows.
Ozien.
What? You read Shanklin's review, right? Like, so you know what?
So that was how he hell of a dodge.
So it's not a dodge. We don't know. It has a viscosity. They've measured it. We can't even get into it.
How can you measure it, but you don't know what it's composed of?
Sounds like a religion.
Sounds like the speed of light fluctuates when you measure it with different devices shielding it corresponding to the metal. So anyway, Ozien, question for you. You were saying that you read Shanklin's...
But you can think that if it helps you sleep better at night.
Well, maybe you should read Galaev's paper and shut the fuck up.
Let him ask the question.
So Ozien, you were saying that you read Shanklin's paper, right?
Stand for myself.
Right? So you're going to stand behind that. So you know how... Okay, dude. So you know how he analyzed Miller's work, right?
He took his data and he averaged it and determined there was no... statistical significant data, Miller's data from Miller's test.
From which experiment? What time frame?
I think it was the 25 and 30 experiments. I can't remember the details. Yeah, you can explain it to me if you want to.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to see if you actually read it because it's kind of.
I did read it.
Okay,
memorized it? No, I did not. I've spent 2 days on this topic.
Fair enough. I'll give you that because to be fair, I go hard on this. This is my bread and butter. So to be fair, I'll give you that. So what Shanklin did is he hand-selected two of the data sets that matched diurnal fluctuations, so temperature variance, right, where they could chalk it up to that. And then they took another set from his unpublished controlled studies where he was purposely configuring the apparatus to zero out and not give a fringe reading. And they took that, and he didn't even analyze it. He had his lab assistant, his understudy, do an analysis on it where they, said that it was statistical error due to temperature fluctuations, even though Miller's entire career was based on zeroing out temperature fluctuations in all those airs and stuff. So if you want to talk about cherry picking, that's the ultimate cherry pick, bro. He went to his unpublished data and used it to support his conclusion. Go ahead, sir.
So whenever Miller was zeroing out for these temperature fluctuations, right? He did that after every few runs, then he would zero out and he would actually have a hardware adjustment in his apparatus to try to account for these temperature fluctuations. But isn't that kind of a big no-no in science if you're varying your actual apparatus instead of you're introducing another independent variable into your
I've never even heard of what you're talking about.
No,
and what I'm talking about.
But you said that you had read the Hector Munera's.
Before you interrupt
talking
me,
about
buddy.
Miller.
Before you interrupt
I
me,
know.
buddy. Number one,
let me get this point out here, because he said that he had read Hector Munera's work on it, and Hector Munera specifically goes in to exactly how Miller accounted for this, and he shows why it's fallacious. If you said that you had read it, then you would know exactly what I'm describing about when he tried to account for these temperature, when he tried to account for temperature. He was changing the actual hardware of his experiment in the middle of his experiment. That's a big no-no. You're adding more independent
Which run
variables.
set are you talking about, though?
What's that?
For all of them? Which run set are you talking about?
The Mount Wilson
he did
runs.
5,200,000 measurements.
Yeah, the Mount Wilson runs. I mean, they cite him like that was his standard procedure, was when he tried to account for
Wilson
temperature.
run.
What? So anyway, dude, even on top of that, Galaev corroborates his measurements too. Same fluctuations. So let's just relax for a second. What Shanklin took, he didn't even take that from Mount Wilson. He took it from an unpublished work that he had in a lab at the case physics school. He had an interferometer there that he was working with for his controls. So he didn't even use the Mount Wilson data in his analysis. He didn't even mention the sidereal fluctuations. Didn't even touch that in his analysis. Just hand wave dismiss Miller on temperature fluctuations.
Yeah, and just like Miller was very well aware of the temperature fluctuations. He was trying to get rid of the temperature fluctuations, like you said, and he didn't just move it as he needed to make his measurements see fit. Like Alan already explained, he had his assistant helping with these things. They were doing it in an objective manner, not in a manner where they were trying to pad the results one way or the other. That's why he even included the null results. But if you actually look at his paper, he talks about how, every single time that he would try to induce these effects in a lot of cases just to see, like, is this actually causing the difference here or the relationship here? And even when he did that, he says right here, the results of the observations were not affected by any of these changes. He keeps talking about the periodicity, the periodic effect. Every single time that he's able to change the measurements, but the important thing is the periodic effect. That's the measurement. That's what the analysis actually shows, is that there's a periodic effect that relates to the motion of the sun. And going back to the thing earlier about first order, second order measurements, what they were trying to do, like they were actually getting a first order measurement of the ether wind. And that's our whole point, is that we want to be objective about it. We want to look at the ether wind and what's actually being measured. 7.5 kilometers a second, go up higher and you're at 9-10 kilometers a second. That's really fascinating. That's really interesting. And then also, Miller was trying to do his own analysis of it. He was working with other people to try and come up with some kind of a second order equation that would say that we could take that this motion that correlates to the motion of the sun in the sky, and we could somehow relate that to an orbital velocity and a rotational velocity and an absolute velocity. Somehow there's some kind of second order effect that allows us to get this measurable relationship with what's happening in the sky. But our point is, we don't have to agree about Miller's theory about his second order measurements. We're curious about the first order measurements that he took and what he witnessed and what his explanation was with regards to, actually getting these real measurements, because like with LIGO, they're underground and they're covered with metals, and they're with Ginger, they're pointing them at the sky.
I want to get MC tuned into this. Let's do back and forth too. Let's give the four of you a chance. I'm just some lay person, so I'd rather.
Yeah, you're good. You're good, bro.
Go ahead, MC.
My point was that Miller's experiment was not reproduced, and Galaev didn't reproduce it. It was a different experiment. So the same type of experiment would be what I would expect. So things like the laboratory tests of isotropy and light propagation to the 10 to the negative 17 level from 2009, or a repeat from 2008 by Muller and Herman. There's a handful of that's just a couple of them. And I'm aware of Picard, and the ones that Picard did were not in agreement with Miller, to my knowledge. Maybe there's some others I didn't see, because he did a whole bunch. That was my point about not being repeated. It's an outlier in the interferometer measurements like that.
Toby, Alan?
Yeah, dude. Galev literally did the same thing. So he did it with a regular interferometer too. Like, you know, he didn't just do the radio wave one, right?
I didn't see that one. No.
Has anybody read the Galev papers? I tried to find them. I'm glad you posted them on my Discord, Alan. I had to read the Mail. That's an interesting paper if you haven't read that. This freaking orgasmic, cosmic.
Oh, I haven't read the organite stuff. No, if you want to get into organite, dude, I got a guy. I know a guy, but that's not.
That'd be another show.
So then my question is, Alan and Toby. So Miller concluded that the solar system was moving 208 kilometers per second towards a position in the southern celestial sphere. Has that been repeated, or is that an outlier?
You're talking about his second order theory, right?
I'm talking about the conclusion of his measurements.
The second order theory. I don't really like I already clarified.
You cherry pick them away. To be clear.
No, he makes it very clear in his paper that he has a difference, and he makes a very clear distinction in the difference between the first order and the second order measurements.
Okay, so then have one of you taken the raw data, which must be available, right? And then done whatever analysis you want to do to it to analyze it to how you're doing it. So to make some conclusions, or do you just look at that and say, oh,
you're just gaslighting. You're not actually going to acknowledge what I already explained about how they actually measured a correlation of motion with the sun to the Earth, and that's why he had to come up with the second order measurement. That's why he had to come up with the theory.
Thank you.
Huh?
That's a no. You've not done the analysis.
No,
because you reject
the raw data. The raw data is not available. All you can get is analysis from the time of when he did his own measurements. So that's actually all you can get. You haven't done the analysis either.
So how did Shacklin do the analysis?
Hold on a second. Well, in his time, he was able to get the data, right? So number one, yes. 1 second. There was a Maurice Elias in 2000 something, like the early 2000s, who got Miller's data, did an independent analysis of it, found that he got sidereal fluctuations that match sidereal time.
Where'd that data go?
On. 1 second, man. 1 second. Then number two, Demio was the last person to request it. I think it was in 2014, and that's what he did. His paper is an analysis. We don't have any of the raw data. We only have two people that independently corroborated Miller's data. We don't have the sources of it.
So where's Demio? Is he still around?
No, he died a couple years ago.
Okay, so maybe he got the originals and they're not to be found anymore?
No, he has an extensive archive on his website, and he doesn't have the original Miller data on there.
Okay, all right.
I've looked extensively for it.
We've been trying to get it. If anyone has it,
the Organa website.
Okay, so
in Ashland, Oregon, I read that. I went to that website. It's okay. Healing energy, like it seems absurd, but I get it. But that's where I found a lot of these papers from there. I'm not criticizing. That would be like a fallacy to say the papers are bad because it came from a odd source. But
well, he just has them archived there. Like the Galev papers are published in Russia and stuff. So like we just like finding them from our side was I'm sorry. Yeah, so they're on like a Ukrainian, publishing. So
I looked them up. The papers I found for Galaev were unreadable to me. The PDFs I found,
it's published in like a section of other publications because like the way that it's just like a big review kind of thing of mainstream science that they do. So like they publish stuff and critique and whatever. Anyway.
Well, that's part of the scientific method though. So like when I'm complaining about this in my opening, I was calling that sort of pseudoscience. It's not pseudoscience per se, but when you appeal to a paper as if it sort of has some type of legitimacy, and the paper hasn't been peer reviewed, and when there are comments on the paper, they're refutations by peers to say this isn't whatever type of problems you see in the paper. That's part of the scientific process. So when I see that with these people, I say, well, I'm just not going to accept this as being a good source to explain the nature of the world. And I understand, like, people say, well, that's just a faith or belief system or whatever you want to call it. I really don't care. But, like, I sort of trust the people that have created the scientific process. They've allowed us to go to the moon. They've allowed us to build all this technology we have. And so I sort of trust the process. And you could say, well, you should be more cynical of people that are in positions of authority, but I have no reason to be that way. I have no reason to doubt these type of claims.
So if I'm understanding this right, you're saying that these interferometry experiments are empirical evidence for the existence of ether and that the speed of light is not constant. Am I understanding your central thesis correctly?
Yeah.
So how do you get from there? Okay, so is your idea that this falsifies a globe Earth, or does this just not have anything to do with flat Earth?
So when you get into the geometry of the Earth, we can get into single axis gyroscope readings if you want to do that real quick.
Well, I was just asking, is this a separate issue?
It's a different question.
Yeah, is this a separate issue to the flat Earth? Is this independent of the geometry of the Earth?
So the discussion we're having right now is in regards to the motion of the Earth, its alleged motion.
Okay.
No,
so
this discussion is about whether or not ether exists, really. That's the core of what you're bringing up.
Well, it's twofold, really, because there's a proportional relationship with the speed of light that you can get out of it. So,
yeah, if C's not constant, then you pretty much have to acknowledge an ether, right?
So it's
no, not at all.
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much do, because it would have to be some
there's-
kind of a medium for it to propagate through.
There's
Yeah,
endless
relative
people.
to that absolute space to invoke.
That,
You have
hold
to.
on, Toby. There's endless people that propose that the speed of light isn't constant and sorry.
they don't propose ether.
Don't exactly.
No.
There's
So,
a
yeah,
lot
don't
of work
propose
out
it.
there on
Yeah.
that.
So there's no shortage of people that say ether does exist, Earth is a globe, and no shortage of people that say speed of light is inconsistent and ether doesn't exist. They're all over the place. So there's no conclusion. It's just a false dichotomy. You need
I
to
also wanted to
establish
say-
the positive of your claim.
Can I respond?
I also wanted to say that electromagnetic radiation is composed of non-mechanical waves. So no, it doesn't need a medium because it doesn't move. It doesn't propagate like water waves or acoustic waves to Earth's atmosphere. That's not how light works. That's not how electrodynamics works.
Yeah, is that how light's going in and out of phase, disappearing and reappearing works?
Yeah, phase has nothing to do with whether or not
When
the
you
wave
look
is
at it,
mechanical
suddenly
or
it's a wave, and when you-
non-mechanical.
when you
So
look away,
phase
it's
doesn't have
particle.
anything to do with whether it's mechanical or non-mechanical. Both can be described by phases. A mechanical wave is a wave that's actually like moving through something. It is just changes in this physical medium, like water or the Earth or Earth's
As
atmosphere.
opposed to what kind of medium?
That's not a field. It's not really a medium. It's just perturbations in
A
the
field of
electromagnetic
absolute
field.
space, perhaps.
No, the electromagnetic field.
You're
quantum
you're
field. See,
actually disagreeing
this is how I
with
know that you
Einstein
guys don't really
1905
know what
right
you're
now,
talking
just
about is
FYI.
because I'm talking about the quantum field, and quantum fields are non-composite entities. It makes no sense to say
Because
what is a
quantum
quantum
fields
field
actually-
made of.
Okay, you for some reason you're talking about quantum fields. Okay.
Well, because you asked, okay, so then what is light moving through? The electromagnetic field. Oh, it is a field of absolute space. No, if you know anything about quantum field theory, it's a field. It has a potential, a non-zero potential at every point in it, and it is distributed all across space. That's what a field is, largely even classically.
That's what a field is. Wait,
That is what the electromagnetic field is. There is a potential
it's a potential
everywhere
point.
in
That's
this
what a magnetic
field with
field is, a
respect to
potential
things that are
point.
electrically charged,
that's
which
a
allows them
very
to couple to
elegant
that field.
explanation.
Boy, Toby just overtalks. Hey, I Ozien, I gotta go pick up the kids.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for having me on. We'll see you later.
Peace,
Good
McTiernan.
to see you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, Alan, I'll send you a DM on Discord. We gotta reschedule.
Later, G.
All right.
Yo, all right. So real quick on the screen, if you can bring that up, we can go over Maxwell's equations real quick. And so this term that was added here, by the way, this is from
Pull it up, Max.
yeah.
Nothing
So
is
this-
funnier than Maxwell's equations.
So this
Well,
is
while
from,
you pull that up, hold on.
Yeah.
There's a good question by Stephanie McGuire here. Why are some of y'all so against ether? It's a wonderful thing. It could even help us have real free energy. That's why academia does not allow it to be recognized. I'm all for free energy. I just have no reason to believe it's true. It's not that I'm against it. Like if it's not true, then there's no way to get free energy from the ether. If it is
Yeah.
true, then maybe there's a way. I don't know what that method is. Maybe Toby or Alan could explain how you would get free energy from the ether, but
I don't know
we could go over Maxwell.
Well, I don't.
mechanism.
Just to answer the question, I don't really care about an ether. If we actually had evidence to show that there was one, then I mean, it doesn't really matter to me. And I mean, there could also be an ether, and the speed of light could still be constant. There's papers actually on that too. So I don't really care about whether or not there's an ether. There just isn't one, as all of our physics tells us. What was the second part of that question there, Ozien?
That was really
You answered it.
Yeah.
Oh, the free energy. Yeah, legit, like literal free energy is impossible. Entropy.
Yeah. You can't create or destroy energy. But yeah, go ahead, Alan. It was Alan that was showing the paper, right? Maxwell equations.
Yeah. So Maxwell's equations. This paper is by Onel Denou. He did his master thesis on this, and he got his master's. So what he points out here, he goes over the history of Maxwell's equations in terms, right? So what we have here is this this term here was added to describe. It's called Maxwell's displacement current. And what it describes is it basically, if you look at a diagram of electromagnetic propagation, you have the electric current inducing a magnetic field, and there's an intersection point, right? So that intersection point is that charge potential that allows that electric field to induce that magnetic field. So this term was added to say you don't need that intersection point to be charge potential. Like, they removed the ether from it. And this was never experimentally verified or anything. This is just a mathematical term they added in. And now when they teach people electromagnetic theory and all that, like they teach it etherlessly as if things can propagate through space and it's reified through the mathematics. But this term he did his master thesis on has never been experimentally substantiated. His thesis was in 2012 or 2014. So from when that term was added until 2014, no experimental evidence to say that.
What does the term do?
So the term removes the need for there to be charge potential for the electric field to induce a magnetic field.
What
basically
exactly is that supposed to mean?
So I'd be interested in seeing that paper. Can you post that? Wait, can you post that on my Discord? Because I am an electrical engineer, so this
absolutely,
31 years.
Absolutely, I would love for you to take a look
I just want to be clear
dope.
here. So, I mean, when you say that there's no empirical support for this term, to my understanding, Maxwell's equations give accurate results. So, what do you mean that there's not empirical support? I mean, when they use this equation, right, they are getting accurate results that comport with empirical measures, right?
Yeah, it depends on the structure of how you're. So, like when you learn electromagnetism, the quantum mechanics is sort of taught in a similar way analogically, but you can be talking about electric currents that aren't time varying, and then there are ones that are time varying, and that's what that addition is for, because the divergence of this aspect of the field always comes out to zero unless the electric field is time varying. Then you need to add this correction, because to fix for that, what happens is a time varying electric field, and we've done this, we literally have machines that do this. A time varying electric field will induce a magnetic field. And yes, this is a real thing. It's called electromagnetic induction. I've used it in foundries to melt metal.
Yo, what's that word for heteros? What was that word? Or hereticism or something like that? We were just talking about that last night, Alan.
Oh, the
and notice how they're not addressing anything I said and are deflecting to something else.
Well, maybe
I was actually adding on to what you said.
Yeah.
What you just described at the end there regarding the geometry, the speed at which magnetism starts and slows down. It's not a direct linear speed. It has to essentially remove the impedance from the space in front of it before it can actually.
What are you talking about? I said nothing that I don't know where you're at. All I did was point out why this correction exists.
Have a conversation and add on to what you said.
Ampere's law.
Hysteresis is a real phenomenon in with electromagnetic when you're talking about transformers, when you're conductors and stuff like that. You get hysteresis.
Sure.
It's like vibration. I think it's what vibration losses, right? I'd have to.
Sure, but that doesn't bear on anything that I said.
It sounded like what you described at the end there, but maybe I'm wrong. My bad.
Yeah. Magnetic induction lags behind the magnetizing force. So when you energize like a transformer, you get a lag you get a whole bunch of harmonics actually when you first energize all that because of the core and the coil and stuff like that. You get second, third, mostly second, fifth, and seventh harmonics that are really detrimental to our electrical system. So
that's really interesting.
Anyways, but they filter out really quick.
We're getting past
yeah. We're on the ether. How does this support the ether? Like I understand, like, okay, so they removed, we got Witsit too. That way it'll be three here. Hey, welcome, Witsit.
Hey, I heard you guys got smoked.
Yo,
we did. How you doing?
Hey, can I answer the ether question real quick?
Yeah. Maxwell equations. How does, like, you're saying we didn't verify that Maxwell equations don't require the ether, but how do we know?
Well, they do, because you can't just induce a charge potential across nothing, right? You actually need a medium from which the instantaneous action at a distance to occur. But like, and for me, just because you kind of ask like, why is this important or whatever, like, I'll just say, like, for me, this is a really personal thing. And like, yes, I am a flat earther, and this is part of how I actually came to find flat earth, was to figure out how this had been misrepresented to me growing up. Because as a kid, I actually had the question once, hopefully it's just a mic problem. As a kid, I actually had like something inside of me told me that there was a background medium that they weren't measuring, and they're making these assertions about everything and what an atom is and how we exist within this like nothingness, and everything's disconnected and these little particles. And I remember like asking in like middle or elementary school, asking my teacher, like, how do they know that there's not something actually that we exist within that they just can't measure? And my teacher was like, just don't ask that question ever again. Because I'm certainly not going to have an answer for you. And so like my whole life, it always bothered me a little bit. And then I learned about twin paradox, relativity, speed of light, time and space warp around the speed of light, and it creates paradoxes, issues of simultaneity that can't be explained, covariance that can't be explained. But I always do. It's just the twin paradox in general. Like that's something that doesn't sit right with that. That's not how reality works. And when I realized that all these things converged onto the one time they tried to measure the motion of the Earth, that's when they had to start. That's when they had to uptake all these things. They had to throw the ether out, because they always knew you can't just induce charge potential across nothingness. You can't across a space-time continuum. That doesn't work. You have to have a medium. There has to be some kind of translation of that force, of that motion, of that pure potential. And if you so when I realized that all converge in one point, and I realized like, holy cow, like maybe there is this background medium, and actually like light doesn't have to, there's also another paradox too, right? Particle wave duality, because you have to have these particles to shoot through the vacuum, because you can't have a background medium. And so once I realized that all these things, I can throw out all these paradoxes, right? Like, oh my gosh, like light's just a wave. It's actually just a phenomena between the dielectric and the magnetic. It's just a expression of the conjugate waves moving in relation to each other, and it actually just needs a background medium. It's so easy if you just include the background medium. You can get rid of so much cognitive dissonance. Like, holy cow, and like, wow, like what, it was so cool that like not only is the ground beneath my feet not moving, not only is like they're not like some like insane nothingness out there, and I don't live in like some insignificant corner or whatever, but like everything is connected and everything exists within the same existence, and that everything is not infinitely separated from everything else. Everything is actually infinitely connected to everything else. So to me, it all comes together into this one big thing where I'm able to see a big, much larger truth all at once.
Are you a panpsychist by chance?
Toby, what I'm hearing from this is that since childhood, you had a gut feeling and you had personal incredulity about the science that you were learning. And now, through your various confirmation biases on the internet, you've come to think that I was right all along and everybody else was wrong, and I know the truth that they're all missing. That's what I was hearing with all that.
I mean, I didn't say anything like that. I didn't say anything about my story of how I got here. I actually set out to prove my brother wrong. I had a brother that was trying to convince me about flat Earth, and I actually set out to prove him wrong. So I had to dive into a bunch of rabbit holes, right? And the next thing I know, I'm like,
it just sounds like this is about feelings.
The feeling is that you guys are so lacking in confidence intellectually that you have to conform to majority, and that's objectively the situation. Because when we bring up stuff like, oh, did you know that this paper actually shows C plus V? Not one person reads it. They all claim they know it's wrong. They wait. Before they read it, they claim they know it's wrong. Whenever we point out that relativity can't be true within your own paradigm, you guys all defend it religiously. The reality is that you guys have to conform, right? You have to fit within the consensus. that's just a fact. I mean, if we want to pretend that's not what you guys are doing, that's cool. But you want to talk about feelings, right? I mean, you respond emotionally, impulsively whenever you hear contradictory information that you're not familiar with.
Feelings.
Consensus.
Okay,
that's a fact.
Leo. But I did read.
You're doing it right now, actually, Leo.
I think he's being silly right now. But I did read the paper 2 days ago, and I commented it on stream 2 days ago about the C plus or minus V, about the 14 nanosecond difference in the clock times going east to west versus west to east. And I explained like what the explanation was for that.
What is it?
Oh, Sagnac effect. That's the explanation.
Sagnac effect somehow is going to give us a preferred direction for electromagnetic propagation.
It's not a preferred direction. It's that the Earth is rotating, so the people are getting the distance of the clocks while the Earth is rotating. You can call it a reification fallacy, but all these papers you're appealing to conclude that the Earth is a globe, that the Earth is rotating. They're just explaining in some concepts that the time is different for light, but that paper never measured the actual speed of light. It did not.
And the Sagnac effect is just a result of the asymmetric position of the observer with respect to the cyclical path of the two propagating light paths. So, I mean,
dude, this is what's so funny, right? Do people like this guy? He says stuff like that when this is the true reality. There's like 13 to 14 different proposed relativistic interpretations for the Sagnac effect, and it's not agreed upon. Fact. That's a fact. Secondly, right, like C plus V doesn't just disappear by saying phrases like the Sagnac effect or time dilation. Just saying phrases. Like last time, Leo just screamed time dilation, and somehow that was legitimate. No. If light is being received at a different time with the same distance, speed equals distance over time.
Not the same distance with a Sagnac device. That's the point that you guys are consistent.
So light in the same reference frame of the Earth actually changes distance, right? In the same reference frame based on direction.
No, it's because of where the observer is. That's what's causing the two light paths to be different distances, because the observer is in an asymmetric position with regard to them.
And I steel manned that argument yesterday or 2 days ago. I did explain that, like everything you just said. So, but I dismiss it. No. You can call I just want to reaffirm something you said earlier. It is true. I have a worldview. I have preferred methodologies of what I accept as true when it comes to the nature of reality. I accept authority figures that I trust, and I don't see anything that's wrong with that, fundamentally wrong with that at all.
Oh, except that it's like religious, and someone had the audacity to say
religion?
Someone had the audacity to say that it was dependent upon feeling. And literally, that's what you guys operate out of is feeling, right? Because I'm not done. No. In reality, the same level of experts you guys appeal to, the authorities, when I go and have them on my show, like a PhD physicist who literally wrote his thesis on the motion of rigid bodies and relativity, and he specifically says that relativity can't be true. He worked with people that worked directly with Einstein.
This is literally what an appeal to authority.
Shut up, Leo. I'm not sure if you heard me speaking. I already called you out how you're super soft in person, but pretend to be tough on the internet.
Finish your thing, and I
want to respond. Are you yelling at me when you have some little girl laughing to the middle of me every time I speak?
I just told him to stop.
Am I a pretty girl?
Stop, Leo. I told you to
finish your thing. Is he like clinically insane, you think?
Yes. No, I'm autistic. Now can you not talk to the clinically insane and finish your statement?
I would love to.
And then let me respond.
Okay.
I also would like a chance to respond to the fallacious character assassination that Base Theory did earlier whenever you get a chance.
So I'm going to make the point here, right? Which is that you guys, quote unquote, appeal to authority. I trust authority. When we go to read the actual authorities you appeal to, they don't agree, right? Half of them think relativity must go away, modify Newtonian dynamics. All kinds of PhD physicists say relativity's been debunked multiple times, right? And this is all objective.
No, it's not.
There's over 200 published papers on NASA's own database saying relativity's got to go.
You
saying
just said
relativity's got
50% of scientists are on Mond's side. That is absolutely
very
not
false.
50%.
no. Listen carefully to what I said. Maybe if you listen instead of
heard
being
you.
so. No, you didn't.
50% on his show.
I said like
think he said.
50% of scientists agree that relativity has to be done away with, and are moving towards something like modified Newtonian dynamics.
They're not.
Oh, that's a
That's
fact.
50%.
Now that you listen to what I said, it's a fact. That was a shocker.
I
So
just said they're not. I just disagreed.
they
with your
absolutely
characterization.
are.
It's not
Can you
factual.
post the reference that it's 50% that think
It's
we
just
need to
I
do
said
away?
it's a rough estimate of people, but
Oh,
this
so
is what this is
okay,
what's
that's
so
fine.
funny.
Oh, but you said it was objective, and now
No,
you're saying
no,
it's a rough estimate.
It's
No.
just anecdotal based on his experience.
When I
with
say
people he's talked
like
to, that's fine.
50%, right? It just
Man,
means
that's
that
a
there's
lot.
a large amount of people. But what is objective is that you have a huge split camp in the authorities in which that you appeal to. But you guys run around pretending you're the authority by repeating the archaic, outdated, already disproven 1905 version of events. And that isn't the case. You aren't smarter than us because you have like a layman term understanding, a layman explanation of gravity that's outdated. I want you guys to acknowledge the meta. Acknowledge the meta that you guys act like you're smarter than
Here we
us
go. Let me
because you
acknowledge it.
repeat the archaic, outdated consensus because
Let
you
me
hand your
acknowledge-
own. I'm almost done. You hand your own critical thinking over to another group of people, and you must conform to consensus. Can you admit that, please?
No, but I will acknowledge that
Of course
not
you
just 50%, but the vast majority of physicists would acknowledge that relativity is going to have to be replaced by some other theory of gravity that can explain quantum gravity. So, yeah, everyone will acknowledge that there needs to be a theory that can explain quantum gravity that will, like, similar to how relativity came around and expanded on Newtonian gravity into more like different scales of high speed or high mass scenarios. There's going to need to be another theory that supersedes relativity on quantum scales. Everybody could agree with
That's
that.
not what happened.
you
Relativity didn't
characterize-
expound upon Newton.
Well,
It directly
let-
contradicted
Come on,
it.
man. For you
Let
to
Grayson finish.
characterize that
Well, I have
as
a stream,
saying
I have a stream.
50% of these scientists are heading towards modified Newtonian dynamics,
I didn't
is
say that.
completely fallacious. That is exactly what you said.
But he said he was exaggerating a little
No,
bit.
and
He
I
just-
said something like that. Okay, but this is, and I even clarified it and corrected you, and then you did it again, right?
Let's
But
say
this is the
5%.
reality. Wait, stop. No, Einstein didn't expand upon Newton. He fundamentally contradicted and supplanted
What's the
it.
contradiction?
Oh, okay, I'll tell you. One says gravity's a force. One says gravity is not a force. One says that ether is required for instantaneous action at distance. One says time actually physically widens and slows down. One says that space is absolute and fixed. One says space is not absolute and fixed. One says an object will only deviate from a straight path if there's an external force acting directly on it. One says that an object can actually go in a straight path and a curved path simultaneously, free falling through the geodesic of curved space. Those are four blatantly contradictory claims that cannot coexist. These are the two first principles of logic. The very two first principles of logic.
I didn't
The
hear
law,
P and
hey,
Ws,
the
so I
law
don't
of
know what contradiction you're
non-contradiction
talking
and the
about.
law of the excluded middle. You guys are pretending to lecture us, and you don't even understand the first two principles of logic.
I study logic, so I understand logic.
Yeah.
If you want to get a philosophical debate, that's what I enjoy doing. Actually,
So then you
Like,
agree that
science
those
isn't
can't
my thing.
coexist?
Well, you
Yeah,
didn't really give a contradiction. What you
Yeah.
did show is that general relativity, like Grayson said, expounded upon Newton, who had obviously a very limited understanding of reality relative to today. But it's funny that we still use Newton all the time.
That's called a non sequitur. So he said he just said it wasn't a contradiction. This is what I'm
non-sequitur.
saying. You guys are religious. So
I
let's
said
answer
you
this.
didn't give the
Answer my question.
contradiction. I
Answer
didn't
this
say it
question. Answer this
wasn't one. I
question.
said
He
you
said there
didn't
were no
give one.
contradictions. Answer this question. Is
I said
this
you didn't
statement
give one.
gravity is a force, and then this statement gravity is not a force? Are those contradictory?
Yeah.
Not really. No, not in this context.
Yeah, and how are you guys not religious, right? That's what I want to
That's
know.
the guy who
I
claims
just
that he
said it
knows
was a
logic but doesn't know what
contradiction.
dialetheism
Right,
is.
Ozien, you're one of the honest
Fucking
people,
But-
but my
But
point
there are
remains.
other forms of logic, like Leo's pointed out, like when he said that.
I
But
want to
yeah,
hear
go
what
ahead.
Leo's explanation was for him saying that there wasn't a contradiction there.
He's going to
Because you
divert
treat
away
gravity
to
as
how
a
we still
force,
use the
like-
math of Newton and how they're
Gravity
similar
is
on
a
Why
small
don't you let
scales.
him explain it then, Witsit?
He already did.
What did I say?
You said we still use Newtonian mechanics, which is just you saying that since the
That's not
math
what I
is
just
similar on
said.
small scales, somehow that's
Actually not
okay.
what I just said. That's actually
Okay,
not what I just
explain
said.
how they're not
What I said
contradictions.
that
Go.
gravity is a pseudo force. So I mean, like it's it kind of is a force, but it's not a force in the sense that like fundamental physics uses the term force.
Okay,
it's not
so
a force like electromagnetism or like chromodynamics.
Okay, so if one says it is a force and one says it's not a force, they can't coexist applying the literal first principle of logic. What about this one? Newton said,
I mean, they can.
Newton said that
Newtonian
space is
dynamics
absolute and
just a
fixed.
simplification of general relativity, kind of like, you know, Newtonian mechanics is a simplification of quantum mechanics. Newtonian mechanics and Newtonian gravity are still used. They're still useful. We can make predictions with them. So this idea that like we've falsified Newton isn't, and I mean, there's even like non-flat Earth, completely smart people that say this. He wasn't falsified. We built upon his ideas, and that's how. So like, just like Darwin, we've gone far beyond what Darwin said about the evolution of life. I'm still talking.
I just want to.
Doesn't even say who it is.
I'm just drawing a quick analogy.
Why do the other Globers not call fast like him out? That's what I want to know.
First of all, it's my show. First of all, I wanted to respond to what's this whole friggin' like 3-minute rant, so I'll make a video because I didn't get a chance to respond to all your points. But what's your second supposed contradiction?
Okay,
what's it? Like,
it's not supposed. It's just like a 5-year-old would know that if I said the door is open and the door is closed, that they're contradictions, right? So the next one is Newtonian mechanics says an object will continue in a straight path unless an external force acts upon it. Einstein said that the object will go in a straight path and a curved path simultaneously, meaning it can go in a curved path without an external force acting upon it. And that specifically, that's what the Earth is doing in its orbit. It's free falling in a linear path. And just because space is curving from an outside reference, it's also curving the path, right? So one says that there must be an outside force acting upon it to remove it from a straight path. The other one says, no, it can go in a curved path without an outside force. Are those contradictions?
It depends if you're in Euclidean or non-Euclidean space.
Thank you.
Oh, wait. Now, this is the part that's so funny. You guys don't seem to know that physics is proposed interpretive frameworks of physical reality, meaning that they're explanatory. Math is descriptive. So when you talk about coordinate systems and, the math is the same, yeah, it's just a description. But if one of them are actually describing physical reality properly, then there just is one or the other. They don't get to coexist in contradictory nature. That's what I'm saying. This has made you guys lose the first principle of logic in your brain, which is what Toby was talking about. And then you basically gaslit him and character assassinated, talking about how he just operates on feelings. No, he's talking about how you have to actually hold contradictory beliefs to be true simultaneously to go around and defend this worldview. So that's why you got to run around shorting out like robots.
No. I never said anybody here operating on feelings. First of all, somebody else on the panel may have said that.
No, you're right. Grayson did.
I did, and I can defend that because the very first thing that Toby said was, ever since my childhood, I always had a feeling that there was a background meaning. That was the first thing he said.
To be fair to Toby, he was just explaining like his personal experiences, but that wasn't his argument. That was not his argument.
Not at all. Of course, that wasn't my argument. I'm not trying to say that my feelings prove reality.
His point was that one of the frameworks didn't make sense to him and seemed contradictory. Right. Yeah. And he had to force himself to believe it. You guys are still doing that. And I just pointed out two fundamental contradictions. And another one is that Newton didn't even account for a time variable. Right. So it had to be instantaneous action at a distance. This is the main problem. You guys don't read Newton or Einstein. So Newton said specifically, this blows my mind. I can't even understand it. He said, this is insane. It must be a direct act of God because it has to be instantaneous action at a distance. And the idea that brute matter would act on another piece of matter through long distances of a vacuum with no medium touching both pieces of matter.
We get it. You're just going on and on and on. Okay.
No. One requires instantaneous action at a distance. One invokes time dilation with a time variable. So those are contradictions, right? Not really.
Take your point succinctly. The point is that Newtonian mechanics works on certain scales where, like, Einstein's equations can be reduced to Newtonian mechanics at those scales.
That is a red herring fallacy.
Approximation.
No, what the fuck?
No, it's just basic. Wait. If you're trying to do mathematics, we round stuff, we make stuff.
We're not. We're talking about physics.
Why no? It's so.
You use math and physics, Witsit.
No, use math to describe physical theories, Grayson. That's the point. You don't understand the difference.
As an
So,
engineer,
real quick,
as
while
an-
I have all these books
as
on
an-
my lap, this is my.
Really quick,
massive sci-fi book collection. I used to be a massive sci-fi nerd. I bought into all this stuff. It's not like I was like trying to, live in a fairy tale land, and so that's why I became a flat earther.
Can we agree, Mr. Logic? Ozien, you said you're good at logic. Okay, can you agree that every time I point out that they make fundamentally contradictory claims, as in the explanatory positions of both of the theories are contradictory, and then someone responds with, but it works sometimes, and you can make the math the same on some scales, that it's by definition a red herring fallacy?
Well, if you look at Einstein field equations, a lot of the equations look like Newtonian equations, except with more steps.
Are you doubling down on the red herring? I asked you, is that a red herring?
There was no red herring. You don't know what that is.
First of all, I don't get a chance to fucking talk on my own channel. I know you're streaming this too, but this is my channel that you came on. So give me a moment to talk. Thank you very much. So you can see that there's an equivalency there. But as an engineer, I'm not going to use Einstein field equations. I'm not a freaking physicist. I don't know them. I use Newtonian equations. They work for what I do in everyday life. They're just fine. Give me the results I need.
Okay.
Right.
Cool. And I can show you a kinematic equation to get little g. I can show you an equivalence with Coulomb's law and little g.
Then
I
do
can
it.
show you. I can show you
right now.
I can show you an electromagnetic. Okay.
You
Look
won't.
up.
Listen.
Look up the
Just
electromagnetic.
No, he's gonna say
Wait,
I can
who
show
is it that's interrupting again? Is it every time that I'm going to dunk on you people, you incessantly become emotional?
You're not dunking.
No, are you talking? The form of the equation looks the same. It doesn't mean the equation's the same.
Bro. Every single time I point out that they make fundamentally contradictory claims, you guys respond with red herring, which is it is an attempt. It is a point disguised as if relevant, with the intention to divert away from the point at hand. You did it 5 times in a row. Every Glober does it every time. I can repeat your stupid phrase. Oh yeah, well, they're pretty much the same, and Newtonian mechanics still works on the small scale when you're not in the presence of strong gravitational fields. I can do it better than you. Strong gravitational fields are extremely high speeds, like close to the speed of light. So Newtonian mechanics works for intended purposes on a small scale, and you can actually create basically an equivalence between the two mathematical constructs of Einsteinian and Newtonian mechanics on the small scale. Thank you for that.
So good.
What's wrong with that?
No, there's that's cool. That's one fact. It's a fact there. It's a non sequitur though. We're talking about is one of these we're talking about is one of these theories viable to explain reality? They make fundamentally different claims. Math is not physics. Science explains, math describes. We use math to describe our physical theories. They have frameworks and theories and explanations in front of the math. The math describes those things. They're contradictory. And when you said Newtonian mechanics, you said Newtonian mechanics wasn't debunked, but literally, if Newtonian mechanics is true, we would have detected a fringe shift with Michelson-Morley because the Earth would be going in a circular path, and we would have detected it just like the Sagnac effect.
No.
Einstein saved your model by saying, no, the interferometer didn't detect it because the Earth is going in a linear path.
Yeah,
First of all, I don't say Newtonian physics is true. I see it's useful. I would say Einsteinian physics, as far as we know, is the best explanation. But I also know it's not true because we don't have a quantum theory for gravity. And we have dark energy and dark matter that we have to claim is something that's there to explain our observations. So it could be true. I don't actually know if it's true. I wouldn't claim it is. So as far as that's my claim. I think it's a humble claim. So there's no contradiction there in my belief.
None. You guys, the problem is though, you guys don't lead with that. It has to be pulled out of you, like it's your Bible.
That's false.
Like it's your.
No, that's false. That's false because I do lead with that all the time. Whenever I'm asked about Newtonian physics or Einsteinian physics, that's exactly what I say. And I even bring up the idea of mons. I bring up modified Newtonian dynamics all the time as a way to try to friggin' justify that we don't need to appeal to dark energy and dark matter, but no one's really accepting mons as being true in the scientific community. The theory that we still hold to is theory of relativity. If I talk about this stuff, I do explain that, and I do admit to that, and I do admit to the justifications I have for my beliefs, and I do that, and I do accept things as true, and that those are beliefs.
Okay,
So
now this is what actually happens. You guys mock and ridicule. You notice that you interrupted me to do that.
No, I do not mock and
You're
ridicule.
getting really
you, Witsit,
emotional.
because
So-
you're lying about me, Witsit. I do not mock and ridicule.
I'm talking
people.
about the
Tell me when I've
collective.
mocked and ridiculed you. Tell me.
I'm talking about a collective, right?
We've had
Ozien,
3 debates.
Can you calm down, dude?
When have I ever mocked you?
Louise, bro. You are one of the more honest Globers, okay? You are one of the more respectful Globers. I will give you that.
Then like the Globers who friggin' make blanket statements.
The one
about
on your
flat
show
earthers.
right now. We're talking about the ones on your show right now.
Why don't you stop making blanket statements against people on the other side? You're complaining that they make blanket statements about you, that you appeal to emotion, all this stuff. Then stop doing it to me, because I don't do that.
No,
They
okay.
are on the panel.
But I was responding to the other Globers here, right? That are
And to be
presenting the
fair,
conversation.
I do mock and ridicule Witsit, so.
Bro, this is the reality. If you were honestly
I'm
going to
passionate, not
describe,
angry.
if you were going to honestly describe your position, you would say Newtonian mechanics has been falsified. That is a fact. And if you guys can't admit that, because it's easier to run around and say mass attracts mass, you can actually do the equation. And you can try to explain it better. So it's easier and simpler and it works better for you. So you guys all repeat the same script that, no, it hasn't been falsified. It still works. It's the same as Einstein. Einstein didn't replace it. They build upon each other. That is fundamentally wrong. They are fundamentally opposite. So here's my question. Please answer it. Can two contradictory claims be true simultaneously?
No, they can't. And now I'd like to address some of the things that you've actually been saying, because you keep making this claim that physics doesn't describe things. Yeah, of course it's descriptive. You say, oh, it's explanatory, not descriptive, and math is descriptive. But you can do math in n dimensions, things that don't describe reality at all. You know, like when you have math that is describing reality, that's physics. Like you're doing physics. Like that, physics is descriptive. And so like it's just weird to me that you keep insisting upon this point and you're building everything off of that point as to saying like, you know, like I don't know. It's just I think it's
just made my point, bro. You can do math
on a fundamental foundation. And for real quick, when you say that Newtonian mechanics has been falsified, to me, if the equations of Newtonian mechanics are giving accurate results in the intended scale of use, then they're not falsified. It doesn't make sense to me why you would claim they're falsified.
This is the dumbest. First of all, the intended scale of use was the entire universe. Okay, that was the intended scale of use. In case you didn't know, stop interrupting me. This is what I don't understand. I can then say, well, look, I can do the same thing with electrostatics, electromagnetics. So then, if I can just, as long as I can use it on the local scale, and I can be like, well, it works here and here, and not here, but we're just going to talk about here. Then that means it's equally valid. See, in terms of physics and understanding reality, that doesn't serve us any good. Okay, it serves good for anti-flat earther zealots on the internet to pretend like flat earthers are stupid, but in reality, any physicist worth their salt would never go around defending Newtonian mechanics. Never.
Well,
it's so archaic.
You do it all the time.
Let me show you how easy it is to debunk it. Answer this question: will an interferometer detect an object moving in a circular path?
You mean like the Soniac effect? That's what you're talking about?
Yeah. Yes.
So yeah.
Okay.
But really quick.
Okay. So if the Earth was moving in an actual circular path with an actual force acting upon it, then since the Michelson-Morley interferometer was over 10 times more sensitive than it needed to be, and to quote Einstein, should have been decisive, then it would have detected Earth's orbit. Since it didn't, we have two options. One is the Earth's not orbiting. Option two is that the Earth is not moving in an actual circular path with the force acting upon it. Those are your only two options, and Einstein writes about it extensively.
It wasn't traveling. No, it concluded, if it was true, that it wasn't orbiting through an ether, not that it wasn't orbiting.
Or you could just look at Munera that did this in 2017 that found the solar velocity that you're talking about. So
okay. Well, you can send me whatever paper you're talking about.
Yo, 1 second. Hold on. No, you're not going to cite Munera again after we just covered how he counted the fringes improperly and how you don't do that for inertial navigation. You explained how he did it, bro.
Yeah, but again,
that's not how you count it to get a velocity. Inertial navigation systems exist, bro. Inertial
said it was
navigation
improper,
systems
but you didn't
exist, and you
explain
get a
why.
proportional velocity not doing it that way. That's it. They measured a velocity that's not 30 kilometers a second or the other one. Because again,
This is
in
what I was
GPS
talking about
satellite-
earlier. What I was
Dude,
talking
again-
earlier about first, second order measurements, right? That's the whole point, is we're looking at Monera's first order measurements. We don't really care about his theory about his second order, how he's going to try and make it fit into a galactic speed. We don't care. It's the same thing
Sleep-
Stefan
But
Marinoff
his
did
first
to
order
cover
measurements
his butt,
fit
but we don't
the
care
solar
about
laws.
that. We're talking about
No.
first order measurements of the one wave velocity of light in Stefan Marinoff's case, but then in the case of Monera, we're just talking about interferometry readings. But yeah, we care
Well,
about
yeah,
the
we need to
first order
stick,
measurement.
and I want you to stick on the subject here because the Michelson-Morley was the greatest failed experiment in history. That's what it was called. You guys all run around repeating all it did was disprove the ether, and then you also repeat it had relativity had nothing to do with that. That is patently false. All you have to do is go read Einstein. I've shown it on my stream 20 times. I've sent it to all of you. I've highlighted the PDF for you. I've shown you all the quotes, and you guys keep coming and saying that relativity had nothing to do with it. He explains that Lorentz and Fitzgerald saved the orbital mechanics claim from difficulty by introducing contraction, and that we see also from the standpoint of relativity that solution to the difficulty was the right one. Okay, so he said that the difficulty still needs to be saved. If I remove the ether, it doesn't change the fact that interferometry measures circular motion. And if that's your argument, then what you would have to say is the fact it detects the circular motion with the Sadek effect means that there's an ether. You don't even understand the implications of your own doublespeak.
Okay, you keep having pauses where I think you're done talking, but then you just keep going and going. So are you
Just
done
respond
talking?
to what I just said. How about that?
Okay, you are done talking then. Okay, perfect. So again, I cited Munera. Alan apparently has some issues with Munera. He says it's not accurate. I haven't heard his explanation for why that is. He just says that you can't use integer fringe instead of fractional, which was the whole point of Munera's experiment. But okay, take it up with him. In terms of evidence that the ether exists, I don't think that you have provided any so far. I mean, especially ether wind, ether drift. I don't know. I don't think that the concept of the luminiferous ether from the 18th century 19th century holds. So, yeah, is there any point that you feel like I have not addressed out of what you just brought up?
Well, this is what I like. I'm making a very specific point. Whenever Ozien said, "Oh, all it did was show there's not an ether," then Leo stamped it and you stamped it. Okay, that isn't true. It's very simple. Okay, I made the point that interferometry detects circular motion. So if an object's moving in a circular path, the interferometry is going to show an interference pattern detecting that motion. That's what the Sagnac effect is. Now we know the Sagnac effect works. Michelson, Gale, Pearson proved it. It's used in engineering to this day, right? So we know that it detects rotation on the principles of circular motion causing interference patterns, causing a fringe shift. And then you have like 13 different, reverse or like contradictory relativistic explanations. That's not the point. The point is that if you say all Michelson-Morley did was show there's not an ether, when I say, oh, the interferometers detect circular motion, the actual implication of your argument is that when we do detect circular motion in the Sagnac effect, that proves that there's an ether. That's a ridiculous statement. It's a ridiculous statement. If an interferometer, the question is, can an interferometer detect circular motion without ether? Yes or no?
Of course.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to throw the ether out. Let's say Michelson-Morley happened, throw the ether out. You still aren't done explaining Michelson-Morley because there still was supposedly circular motion that the interferometer should have detected. So if you're claiming all it did was disprove the ether, then turning around and claiming the Sagnac effect, you're claiming the Sagnac effect proves that there's an ether.
So
I didn't
like
follow
to
any of
point-
that. That made
I
no
just
I know
sense.
you don't follow it, but that doesn't make it less true.
If I could just I'm posting it in the private chat that Munera paper Witsit for you to look over, where he talks about what the issues are and why it was like what the flaws were in Michelson, Morley, and Miller's experimental work, with them trying to only look at the fractional fringe instead of the full absolute fringe. So he goes through the flaws in their methodology and why they measured what they measured, and then he does it in the modern day. This was from 2017 and in the 21st century, and he explains why when he's redone it with modern techniques and highly precise instruments, he actually does detect the solar velocity in the predicted range.
Why do you keep going
That's
in
okay. So
circles?
now
Hold on,
that goes against relativity because you're not supposed to be able to detect the solar velocity if there's not circular motion. But before we move to that, and I've never read the paper, I'll happily read it like I always do.
Alan did. Can Alan respond real quick? Because like he's just going in circles. He's repeating his only talking point. Alan, I addressed it. Alan addressed it, but for some reason he's just repeating it again. Can Alan have a chance to respond real quick?
How you calculate the Sagnac effect, how an inertial navigation system works with the proportional relationship with the fringes is how you calculate to get the velocity, the actual velocity. This is how a gyroscope works. Remember, thanks, Bob. Remember that? Those devices work explicitly off of measuring the ether, absolute, off of an absolute background, right?
Can you measure an ether if it's shielded though? Can you measure an ether if the device is shielded?
Yes.
LIGO said so.
Yes, and the effects go down. That's the whole kinematic viscosity of Galaev that you weren't able to read.
LIGO didn't measure
this whole paper. This whole LIGO explicitly. Hold on a second.
Waves?
Hold on a second.
Not
LIGO explicitly cancels out Miller's the effects that Miller accounted for. Those what is it? The daily fluctuations in the sidereal variance. They explicitly have a weighted regression model to throw that out, bro. So just like relax on the interferometry stuff.
Real fast though, like this is like I know I'm not trying to take over the show or whatever, right? And I'll fall back. But what happens is when I make a specific point, you guys keep reverting back to some talking point. This is an important point because you guys all just claimed that all that MMX did was debunk the ether. Okay? Now I want you to examine your own logic, the implications of your logic. I said, can an interferometer detect circular motion? You said like the Sagnac effect. I said yes. You said yes. I said okay, cool. So would an interferometer detect circular motion without an ether?
Yes.
You, of course, have to say yes. Okay, so if Michelson-Morley didn't detect the orbits, right, when it would have detected circular motion with or without an ether, it is improper to say that all Michelson-Morley did was disprove the ether. Your side still had to offer additional explanation.
Well, it was set up to measure
it's
the
almost
movement of the
over.
Earth
It's almost
specifically
over.
against
It's almost
the
over.
ether.
It's almost over. I know you have to stop the conclusion. Your side still had to offer additional explanation for why the orbit or circular motion was not detected. Okay, without the ether. And the way that you did that was Einstein said it's actually free falling in a linear path. The reason the interferometer didn't detect the orbit is because it isn't a circular path. It's a linear path. And that's why it wasn't detected. So stop saying it only disproved the ether. It changed all of physics.
Because again, this is non-Euclidean geometry, but I know that you don't know anything about that. So,
I don't.
You think that that's a response, bro?
No, that wasn't a response.
Witsit, I like have some advice. Sometimes you like say shit like I'm slow, dude. Like quick, pithy questions sometimes would be better for me. Just
fair enough. Okay, but do you not get my point? Like we agreed that circular motion would be detected with interferometer, right?
Yeah.
At the time of Michelson-Morley, everyone believed there was an ether, and everyone believed in Newtonian mechanics. In fact, when Einstein went to the Royal Society to try to propose his theory, he got laughed out of the room, right?
Quick,
because like people
comments.
Because
I'm making it. Does everyone agree that at the time everyone believed in an ether and Newtonian mechanics? Okay.
Yes.
Now, if we throw the ether out, you also agree that even if you throw the ether out after MMX, you still have to explain the results. That throwing the ether out alone does not explain the results.
Well, it explains that you're not measuring an ether, wind, or drag, but
I just wanted for the audience, like I think the Michelson-Morley test was in 1887. Einstein came out with his paper in 1905. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that's where. So in 1887, the predominant theory was luminiference ether. I can't say the word.
And there were different theories about it,
but they did know. They knew about the relative velocity relationship, though. Fresnel proposed it back in the 1830s that he proposed the Fresnel drag test with the relationship of water, which has a 44% proportional velocity of the motion of the water going against the propagation rate of the light and going with the propagation rate of the light, which, is like they have relativistic math to make it work, but just physically the explanation is pretty straightforward, right? There's a relative velocity with the relationship to the medium.
Okay. Did you guys notice that you ducked my question and you said it showed that there's no ether?
Really quick, okay? I just want to ask. Is the only evidence for ether wind, or ether drag is the only evidence for that the interferometry experiments that we've been talking about tonight?
No, but you're ducking the question. I said, do you agree? He asked me to break down simple questions. As soon as I did, you diverted to ether drift. I said, okay, do you agree that you still have to explain why the orbit wasn't detected even without an ether?
That's not at all.
I'm actually not sure how to answer that question.
Okay, but we just covered that an interferometer can detect circular motion without an ether. So at the time, people thought that the Earth was being acted on by an actual force called gravity, and it was curving around the sun, which means from the Earth, it's going in an actual curved path because there's an actual force acting upon it, which means if you had a sensitive enough interferometer, you would detect the displacement of the curved path, right? And it was over 10 times more sensitive than it needed to be. Einstein agreed with that. He said it should have been decisive. Okay, so we now have the problem of interferometer did not detect the assumed circular path of the Earth with or without an ether. So you cannot just say that Michelson-Morley disproved the ether and that's the end of the story. It was attempting to detect the relative motion of Earth and the ether. Okay, there's two components.
My point is just that the existence of the ether is not necessary to explain any observed effects currently known to science.
That's a side point, and that I completely disagree with you because you can't explain the impedance of free space. But like,
why wouldn't we be able to explain that?
See, you want me to take the bait so you can get away from the conclusion.
Wait.
I want you to address my point. Can you please all stop saying that all Michelson-Morley did was disprove the ether? I just explained in very simple terms that even if you throw the ether out, you have to explain from your paradigm why the orbit wasn't detected. Throwing the ether out does not fix the problem by itself. Do you guys understand that?
We did detect it, and what we detected is that there was no change in it like we would expect with respect to like there being an ether of some sort.
We detected it by not detecting it.
We did detect the motion of the Earth, and we measured that against how it would move through the ether, except we didn't see what we would expect to see if it were moving through the ether. And so they said, okay, so there must not be an ether. I mean,
so wait, just to clarify, your answer is
the ether existed is not what we see, then we don't need to move forward with this assumption. And then
you're gonna ask another question, or you're gonna
this is an important part. We all have talked for a while, so I'm just gonna go.
He's not answering
this is
the
an
question.
important part, and I've mentioned this to Ozien as well. Is the reason why physicists were proposing an ether back then anyway. And that was because the only kind of wave motion they knew of was mechanical waves. They didn't know that there could be non-mechanical waves like light, like gravitational waves, and like the movement of gluons. So there are non-mechanical waves. They did not know that back then. So they assumed there must be some physical medium, a mechanical medium through which like with water or with acoustic waves in the atmosphere. We now know that's not true. There are non-mechanical waves, and we don't need that. So the concept
why you guys keep ducking the question though?
Ether is very similar to like the concept of phlogiston.
There is
something that physicists proposed because they did not understand reality.
There's a flaw there. I'm pretty sure there's a flaw there. We knew there was a problem with waves traveling before then, like before the Michelson-Morley test, right?
Sure.
I'm pretty sure we did because it had something to do with the light spectrum or something. Not all having the same energy.
It was crazy things in thermodynamics. And
the only reason people propose wave particle duality is because they do not currently understand how light works. Like your point's a red herring fallacy. Can you answer the question?
We understand how light works.
Quantum mechanics.
No, answer my question, bro.
Why don't you address what the fuck I said?
Because it was a red herring fallacy.
How was it a red herring? Explain to me how it was a red herring.
Okay, easily. Yeah, my question was very specific.
Even if I said,
do you agree that even if you throw? I said, do you agree that even if you
responding to a question that you asked, so you claiming that doesn't make it a red herring because I wasn't doing that to begin with. See, again, you're talking out of your ass to dodge responding
conversation, not
you don't have a response.
Like, you guys anger on each other a little bit. Can we stop aggroing? Like,
yeah. So, like, a red herring is attempt to make it look like it's addressing the point while actually attempting to divert. That's what you did. You tried to divert to the philosophical reason why people thought there was an ether back in the day. Non sequitur. We're talking about a very specific question. You guys all repeat the misinformation that all Michelson-Morley did was disprove the ether. What that implies is if you throw the ether out, Michelson-Morley makes perfect sense. That is incorrect. Even if you throw the ether out, your side still has to explain why the interferometer did not detect the orbit. Okay, because there would still be a circular path. Even if it was flying through empty space, there would be a circular path and there would be displacement, thus interference pattern. Okay, so you can't just say it disproved the ether. That isn't all it did from your side. It also updated all of physics and replaced Newtonian mechanics with Einsteinian mechanics. It changed the definition of an orbit. You can prove this. I'm almost done. You can prove this by going and reading Relativity, a Special and General Theory by Einstein, where the later publications actually update the word rotation in reference to orbit to revolution, because Einstein changed the definition of the orbit of the Earth to explain MMX.
Again, I want to respond to this because I do think a more humble position was that Michelson reasoned. I want to answer this, that it doesn't necessarily falsify the ether. It falsifies the idea that the speed of light has to travel through a medium.
No, that's not what the test. No, what the test. No, the test.
Michelson reasoned. I'm quoting it from. Well, I googled. I'm
Wikipedia.
Thank you.
I read Einstein himself.
Finish. I let you speak a lot. Let me finish. If the speed of light, tell me if this is right or wrong. I posted it on the screen. If the speed of light were constant with respect to the proposed ether through which Earth was moving, that motion could be detected by comparing the speed of light in the direction of Earth's motion and the speed of light at right angles to Earth motion. No difference was found. So it had to do with the speed of light, detection of the difference of speed of light, not the ether. So it falsified that.
That's right. Edward Morley wrote in a letter saying our primary goal is to determine the velocity of light. Right? Okay. That's what he wrote in a letter. But the point is still on the table, bro, which is like it was an unexpected result. Einstein phrases it as it was perplexing to physicists. That's how he says it. No one expected that result. So they were just trying to figure out what the velocity of light is. It was a perplexing, unexpected result, and it took physics by storm, right? So they had to update all of physics. We added an entire different type of space. We added a whole different dimension. We changed fundamentally what gravity is, and we redefined the orbit of the Earth as a revolutionary orbit that's free falling in geodesic space.
Okay.
Well, I already explained why, just really quickly, why it was a perplexing result was because that's not what physicists expected. Because again, they only knew about mechanical waves. They didn't yet know about non-mechanical waves.
Yeah.
So it was perplexing to them. Just like I can't remember exactly what phlogiston is, but I know it had to do, I think, with like an early attempt at trying to explain radiation or something like that. And then they actually discovered what radiation is, and they went, "Oh, phlogiston. God, we were stupid." And they kind of just did the same thing with the concept of the ether.
So what I'm reading is that it looks like to be able to detect our like orbit around the sun, and now tell me if I'm wrong or not, it seems like you need a larger interferometer than we have the ability to build at the time. Is that
just read Munera's paper? Read Munera's paper.
Does he explain that in the paper, Grayson?
Yeah, but he talks about all of this, and he talks about the methodological flaws in why Michelson, Morley, and Miller's experiments did not measure anything. He literally goes into all this detail. He measures it himself. He has the solar velocity there. First order measurement, people. So
they you're detecting solar velocity on the Earth, you're debunking relativity.
No, you're not. Just read the paper, man.
Okay, can I share my screen and we'll just read Einstein? How about that?
Wait. In 2022, Munera specifically addressed that point you just brought up, Witsit. And he said, can these results be used to differentiate relativistic versus non-relativistic theories? And the answer is a resounding no. He made a paper all about this in 2022. You should read Munera's work. You might find it very interesting.
I said I would read it, my brother, but we're going to read Einstein real quick. He said, now in virtue of its motion in an orbit around the sun Our Earth is comparable with a railway carriage traveling with a velocity of about 30 kilometers per second. If the principle of relativity were not valid, we should therefore expect that the direction of motion of the Earth at any moment would enter into the laws of nature, and also that physical systems in their behavior would be dependent on the orientation in space with respect to the Earth. For owing to the alteration in direction of the velocity of rotation of the Earth in the course of a year, the Earth cannot be at rest relative to the hypothetical system K through the whole year. However, the most careful observations have never revealed such anisotropic properties in terrestrial physical space, i.e. a physical non-equivalence of different directions. This is a very powerful argument in favor of the principle of relativity. At the bottom, it says, the word rotation was correctly changed to revolution in later editions. What Einstein is saying right here is that if relativity isn't true, we would see that physical systems on the Earth would all be dependent on which direction through space we were moving, that it would adhere to
Einstein said the Earth is flat? Einstein said the Earth's flat, right? He thinks the Earth's flat, right?
You thought that was a good argument?
Well, no, like you keep using Einstein.
Well, you knew it was
example.
stupid.
And yeah, you're just like saying some stupid shit, man. I don't know what the fuck you're saying.
Well, you just said the stupidest thing that's been said, though. Like literally.
As if it is like some sort of religious text that everything Einstein said was
You're
true.
using him as your authority.
No, I'm not.
Hold on.
It's called a hostile witness.
I have a
you know what that
question
is?
Would
That was
you
my
be
first
willing?
time I said something.
Witsit,
You know,
would you be willing to do like a co-stream or something on Munera? Like we pick a day, like a week or so, where we read these papers. We have people on and we talk about the Munera papers.
Sure. If you can answer this in good faith, was what he just said clearly in bad faith, and no one was claiming that Einstein was a flat earther. No one was even using Einstein. No one was using Einstein to argue for flat earth. What we were doing is using as a hostile witness to correct your guys' misinterpretation and misrepresentation of Michelson-Morley. And when he jumps in
you're trying to prove the flat earth by saying there's
no, he's not. He's trying to argue. No. He's trying to argue that the theory of relativity is false. That's what he's trying to argue.
And that Newtonian mechanics was falsified by MMX, even according to your own side. So this is my conclusion here, right? Because I'm already late for my stream. What I'm saying is, if you guys want to believe in this, that's cool.
Was I honest?
Yeah, you were honest. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we can do a stream. But what I'm saying is, if you guys want to believe in this, that's cool, bro. I don't got beef with you. I chill with Grayson in person. We were cordial. It was no big deal. I don't care if you believe in this, okay? But here's the point. If you're going to believe in it, you were cool as well. If you're going to believe in it, at least actually inform yourself on what you believe. Because what you're currently doing, some of you, a lot of you, are coming around trying to convince us, and in fact, a lot of you ridicule us for not believing in a story that you guys haven't even been able to convince yourself to believe in yet. You don't even know what the story actually is. So that's the problem. You guys don't even, how could you mock and ridicule someone for not believing in a story that you think you believe in but don't understand yet? So go read Einstein, understand Newtonian mechanics was debunked by MMX. The orbit of the Earth and Newton cannot coexist. And you need Einstein, you need linear motion, you need a geodesic path. And please stop saying the talking points of, MMX disproved the ether and relativity had nothing to do with MMX and Newtonian mechanics is the same as Einstein. They work together. These are wrong, patently false statements. Nope. Please stop saying it. It's been years. It's exhausting. Right. And you're tricking people. You're tricking people into believing in your religion, and you're not even accurately representing it. So
I think you're misrepresenting what religion means. If you want to say it's religious, like I'm a football fan, that's okay. But religion is typically rituals and stuff when it comes to a belief in a god or deity of some type.
Yeah, but you said typically, right? Because technically, a belief system.
I understand definitions are descriptive, not prescriptive, but I want to point out that Stephanie McGuire says Ozien's definitely honest. I think everybody on this panel is honest. They just have disagreements. They may be it's a little aggressive. People get into debate mode. We don't always actively listen and hear what the person says, and we might not be responding directly to what the other side is saying. That's why it does help to shorten stuff down, though, too. But,
well, one thing for sure is that some people operate in bad faith, right? So if someone lays out a point and then your response is, "Oh, Einstein was a flat earther," that's literally bad faith. It's an intentional gaslighting technique to try to undermine the person. If that's a fact, it's just a fact.
Are you saying?
Maybe I made a mistake, man. All right.
What about?
That's
okay,
You
Billy.
know I wasn't doing that. It wasn't a mistake.
You're okay, Billy. You're okay, Billy Bong.
Sorry, I didn't want to be aggressive. Sorry, I didn't want to act like I was aggressive or anything like that.
You just misunderstood his argument, so that's.
I just wanted to cut you off because you were saying, you're saying too much stuff at a time. You gotta shorten it a little bit more so people can respond to what you're saying.
Yeah, I'll moderate. It's okay. Thank you very much, Billy Bong.
Can we at least come to some agreement here that if people say Michelson only disproved the ether, that's wrong? Can we agree on that? It didn't just disprove the ether from you. If I was a glober, you want to put my glasses on and get on camera and be a glober, I can still man your position.
Can we agree?
Michelson Morley disproved the ether and showed us that actually Newtonian mechanics is not correct because there isn't an actual force acting on the Earth causing us to move around the sun.
You said the Earth was flat at one point too, man.
You asked us a question.
I did think it was flat at one point.
If we agree,
but then I realized it wasn't.
Okay, come on.
Thank you, Billy.
Okay, come on. Like, if we agree with you, Witsit, that Michelson Morley did not disprove ether, will you agree with us that there is no current experiment providing evidence of the ether?
No, I don't agree with that. If you think there's evidence for something like space-time, then there's also evidence for ether. You would have to say that there's no direct physical measurement of it, and I would agree with that in a way because the light is measuring the effects of movement within it. But we absolutely do have evidence for the ether. That's just a fact.
Are you conflating space-time with ether now? When you talk about ether, are you really just talking about what we mean when we say space-time?
No, they're fundamentally different. One is claimed to be a physical, substantive substrate in which everything comes from. And then one is claimed to be simply space and time that somehow has physical properties attributed to it, but it can't be mechanical and it can't have motion applied to it. That's what Einstein said. They're fundamentally different. But my point to that was you're asking, is there no evidence for ether? I'm saying, no, I don't agree with that. All the evidence you claim to invoke for relativity, right, is in the same realm of indirect evidence as it would be for the ether. The problem is that actually the evidence stacks up with the ether and not relativity. That's what the actual evidence does.
Oh, wait. When LIGO measures waves in space-time, do you think that LIGO is measuring waves in the ether?
I don't believe in LIGO's claims to be measuring anything, even though if they were true, then yeah, it would just be oscillations in the background medium, which many physicists from your own paradigm are now saying. But actually, it runs through all kinds of theoretical mathematical models, making assumptive, deductions of different noise that's in the area and trying to determine what is what. And it runs through all these crazy mathematical models where it's not even legitimately reliable. But yes, for sure. A lot of the effects that we see, you guys hijack the ether and claim it's actually space-time. There are similarities because if space-time was bending and warping, well, what if there was a medium that was waving? Well, it would in effect be bending and warping and it would have physical properties, right?
No, yes, because space-time doesn't actually bend and warp. It curves. It stresses.
The problem is you can say, so I have a much different conception of evidence than maybe in the scientific claims. Like, I think if you make a claim that's evidence, there's some doxastic thing that convinces you that something is true. So I'm okay with saying that there's evidence for the ether, but I don't think that I'm justified in believing that the ether exists based upon the evidence that we have. I think we are more justified in believing that theory of relativity is due, especially due the three major experiments we did for the theory of relativity, precession of Mercury, the lensing of light around the sun, and what's the third one?
I don't know, but all of those have been thoroughly debunked. Alan, you're muted. I want to tag Alan and Toby, and I got to go do my stream. Thanks for having me on. Thanks, Alan can dunk on all of those.
Wait, can I ask you a really quick question before you go with it? It can even just be a yes or a no, because I sorry, Ozien, if this is a little bit off topic. It's just something I've always been interested about. What Witsit thinks about this, because he says that what determines the downward direction of what we call gravity is like an electromagnetic effect with electrostatics. And I just wanted to ask, do you have an explanation for why positive and negative charges both fall down? And shouldn't, if it's electromagnetic, shouldn't they be affected in opposite ways? You can even just say, yes, I have an explanation if you don't want to go into it.
Yes, yes. I have an explanation.
Okay, it's a good topic, but
and it's a long conversation though. I'm 15 minutes late for my stream.
Go to your stream.
But frankly, the actual cause of weight is volume times density times downward acceleration. What's the cause of that? Well, the compactness of matter, intrinsically electrostatic bonds. That has a relationship with the medium. There's a vacuum permittivity in all things. No matter what, you can't get rid of it. And so that distribution causes a buoyant effect, which is much stronger than the slight bias that's caused by, say, the downward current or the vacuum permittivity. We can talk more in depth later, though.
I do have one question. How are your kids doing?
Good.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Much love, everybody. Alan and Toby, please dunk on the claims for relativity. All right, later.
Peace.
Sorry I took over. I didn't mean to.
You're straight, bro. Peace. All right, gentlemen. Where were we? So did you want to...
I just want to point that out. People claim it's word salad, but there wasn't really any word salad there. There's complex concepts that Witsit uses, doesn't necessarily... like I try to make arguments where like a broad audience understands it. Not seeing my vocabulary is not like at a high level, but to me, like if I want to say it's dumbing it down, but it's to explain it to people that are lay people, and I think that's more useful. And Witsit sometimes does not do that. But go ahead.
But his sentences aren't even coherent. Sometimes he just says. Sometimes he actually is just saying a bunch of words and trying to make it sound like he's saying something complex.
To be fair,
it's complex.
Let's be fair though. Let's be fair though, Billy. Could it be the case that maybe he is saying something that you just don't understand?
Well, I was trying to understand it, but it didn't make sense to me what he was saying in the sentence. It was just not connecting to me. I don't know. Maybe I was going over my head, I guess then. Yeah.
Fair. So that's the point I was trying to make. But go ahead, Toby and Alan, or whoever was going to speak.
Yeah, so do we want to touch on LIGO?
I can do LIGO real quick.
And then we could get into the general relativity stuff that you mentioned, or...
Well, I'd like to do Monera and stuff on a different stream. This stream was more about the Aether winds. I really don't like to go past an hour, and we're already at 2:20.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
But I would love to sort of wrap it up and then do some closing show notes. So if you guys want to like spend a couple minutes, I really enjoyed this discussion. Like really did. Don't think I have any animosity against any of you guys. And I might get into the debate bro thing with my opening statement, and it annoys people, but that is just I'm trying to be entertaining. So
happens to the best of us. No, I appreciate you having us on, and I appreciate you having the discussion and putting it out there to be televised, because people need to see us having discussions where we disagree on things fundamentally, right? It doesn't matter. I know we're all trying to like beat each other in a conversation or whatever, right? But at the end of the day, we're all just trying to figure out things and make sense of it. So that's an important part to share. And I appreciate. Nick, are you gonna dude? No, you can't, dude. So it's an important part to share that experience with everyone so that we can all grow and learn. And I really appreciate that. And I wanted to invite you every Tuesday and Thursday, we do a show on Aether cosmology. And on Thursdays, we're going to start doing readings of papers where we're going to live read them, go over them, break them down, figure them out, etc. So if you ever want to come onto that, that'll be every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern.
Wonderful.
And then we do a show on Tuesdays
we do presentations. Yeah. If anyone happens to want to look at some alternative theories.
Yeah.
Ozien.
Yeah.
Before we end the stream, can I ask everybody in here, and obviously we start with you, Ozien, just a simple question, since in these discussions, general relativity gets brought up so much. So starting with, and if you don't want to answer, you don't have to answer. That will also tell me what I need to know. So starting with you, Ozien, what is the metric tensor? What does it tell us?
No clue. Next.
Grayson?
Yeah, I'm not that into tensor calculus yet. I haven't taken any general relativity courses.
Alan?
Yeah, so they use different tensors to express different things. One is a tensor that they use to describe the curvature and the geometry of space-time. The other tensors they use to describe the conservation laws. And then when you get into the different types,
specifically the metric tensor.
What about it?
What does that one tell us?
I don't know. You tell me. What you got?
Why are we playing Scully?
We're just. I don't like. What's this have to do with like the topic? Aether wins. I'm like.
Well, no, that wasn't what it was relative to.
Like this. Okay, just like I understand,
like a weird, unrelated gotcha. It's really
I do that sometimes. Like what? Like okay. To be fair, I'll ask some flat earthers I debate. Some of them are not the smartest people. I'll ask them simple questions like, how many degrees are there in a triangle? Eternal angles in a triangle, and most of them have no friggin' clue. It's bizarre. Most of them.
Okay, yeah.
Most of the ones I talk to on Discord, they won't answer the question. I'm not seeing you guys or those.
I mean, really,
I'd say it's on both sides.
Gotcha questions. They're like afraid they're going to say the right answer, and then you're going to somehow tell them why they're wrong or something. I mean, that's just like usually the nature of these kind of gotcha questions, right? It's. I think it's bad faith, and it's fair for people to not want to engage in your silly little game. I don't need to dance for you.
I think. Okay, let's end on a positive note. Let's just close it out, Toby. Let's close it out.
If I could just say, I think that he was just trying to illustrate that we are not familiar with the mathematics of general relativity.
Okay. Or maybe some of us are, some of us aren't. And
it didn't seem like any of us were, because nobody was able to say what
Alan told you exactly how it was related specifically to general relativity. What are you talking about?
Actually, he didn't tell me what the metric tensor tell us. But anyway.
Let's just
let me say it was an awesome stream. I really liked how folks were taking turns, like saying stuff. Leo, you did cool to let people like go back and forth. A bunch of new people hopped on, and I just wanted to say for Billy Bong, when I first heard Witsit, it went way over my head, and I thought he had like he was arrogant. And after like 5 or 6 months of studying, I went back to one of his videos that I just couldn't even grasp. And then I heard it and was like, oh, I'm understanding these things now. And now I can listen to him at 1.75 or even 2 times speed on big streams. And it is going super quick, but I'm not saying I'm a brainiac or anything, but I understand what he's saying. So you just got to give Witsit time. He's not a grifter. He's not a shill. He doesn't make like.
No, he definitely seems like he's pretty smart. And I've heard everybody say that. I've watched the show before. Yeah,
I respect.
He's not an idiot, but he just has like things that he says that people don't agree with. I guess. Yeah.
I respect Witsit.
But at the same time, I do think that he is both arrogant and grifting. I mean, this is how he earns his living, right?
Well, he's not making very much money doing this.
Okay, I'm going to close the stream out. We're going to see our goodbyes.
Thank you for a second. I'm going to hop off.
Thank you so much, Ozien.
I'm going to do some show notes really quick. Tomorrow night, our channel is doing an interview with Grayson's Base 3 right here. So please tune in to that show tomorrow, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
We talk about when I met Kent Hovind and went to Dinosaur Adventureland.
Exactly. So please show up to that. I'm doing a debate on Friday against Caleb at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Modern Day Debates. And we're going to be doing a pre-show and an after show for that. So I hope you all can tune in on that on Friday. So the pre-show should be 4:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And Max will be hosting that one. Please, if you like this stream, you like what we're doing here, please subscribe to the channel, hit the like bell. If you want to help us out, it's $1 a month for the membership. Just hit that join button, the $1 a month. I'd appreciate that so much. But with that, guys, thank you very much. I'm going to close it out, and I'll see you again, at least on Friday. But we'll probably do a show on Monera. It depends on how quickly I can read these papers and get all that set up. So until next time, bye-bye. Use those emojis.